As someone who had historically loved money, I'm really grateful that I still love money, but I saw...
For 13 years, she was the one who knew what things were actually worth. Not just the objects Drew Pritchard hauled back from barns and estate sales and crumbling country houses, but the knowledge behind them, the history, the restoration value, the commercial reality of whether a find was genuinely significant or just impressive-looking rust. Rebecca Pritchard was never the loudest person in the room. She didn't need to be. Then her marriage ended in the most public way imaginable. The scandal broke. The tabloids ran with it. And Rebecca Pritchard went back to work until September 2024, when she quietly walked away. So what really happened? And where does she stand in 2026? The woman behind the expertise. Drew Pritchard found the treasure. Rebecca Pritchard knew what it was worth. That distinction defined everything. It defined how the show worked. It defined why the show worked. And it explained why losing Rebecca from the Salvage Hunters universe left a gap that the production has never quite managed to fill. But before any of that, before the cameras and the Quest TV schedules and the 22 million viewers across 52 countries, there was a woman with 20 years of experience in a completely different industry who had built a career on her own terms long before Drew Pritchard's name meant anything to a television audience. Rebecca Jane Pritchard was born in February 1958 in the United Kingdom. She is 67 years old in 2026. That detail matters because it provides the context for everything else. She was not a young woman finding herself through a television opportunity. She was a mature professional with decades of commercial experience who brought that experience to a new field and thrived. Her career began in women's fashion, not as a designer or a stylist or a creative, as a businesswoman. She spent approximately 20 years working across the wholesale, retail, and manufacturing dimensions of the fashion industry. Her work took her between the United Kingdom and Hong Kong, where she collaborated with companies and fashion designers in both markets. She understood supply chains, margins, and the practical mechanics of moving product from production to retail at a commercial scale. That is a specific and demanding education, not the kind that comes from a classroom, the kind that comes from negotiating with manufacturers in one time zone and managing retail relationships in another, the kind that builds a particular type of commercial instinct that is genuinely difficult to acquire any other way. Alongside her fashion career, she was also involved in property development in North Wales, purchasing and selling residential properties, understanding what a building was worth in its current state versus what it could become with the right investment of time and knowledge. That combination of commercial fashion experience and property development instinct proved to be almost exactly the right preparation for a career in antiques and restoration, which was where Drew Pritchard came in. The two met through their overlapping worlds in the early 2000s. The precise circumstances of their connection have never been publicly detailed in any meaningful way. What is known is that the relationship developed between two people who were already serious professionals in adjacent fields. The passion for antiques that Rebecca developed through that relationship was not superficial. It was deep, technical, and grounded in the same practical commercial intelligence she had applied to everything else she had built. She was appointed a director of Drew Pritchard Limited in July 2006. That is the formal record of when the professional partnership became official in the structures that govern business in the United Kingdom. She resigned from that directorship in September 2010, was reappointed in September 2014, and resigned again in October 2016. That final resignation date is significant in a way that the outline will return to. She was also appointed director of Drew Pritchard Classic Cars Limited in April 2015, and resigned from that role in October 2016, and director of Cloth Cap Productions Limited from March 2015 until the same October 2016 resignation date. 3 directorships, all resigned in the same month, October 2016. The divorce was finalized in 2017. The resignations came first. However, here's the micro question worth sitting with for a moment. What kind of person resigns from 3 business directorships, walks away from the financial and professional infrastructure she had been building for a decade, and then continues showing up to film a television show with the man she is divorcing, a professional one? That is the only honest answer. Rebecca Pritchard had built her expertise in the antiques world through genuine immersion and genuine effort. Her knowledge of restoration and valuation was not borrowed from Drew's reputation. It was her own, earned through years of working alongside some of the best restorers and dealers in Britain, through developing her network of contacts across auction houses, private dealers, and restoration specialists. through learning how to assess an object's historical significance and its commercial value simultaneously. That expertise existed independently of the marriage, and when the marriage ended, the expertise remained. Her United Agents profile, which she maintains as a working professional in 2026, describes her as a restoration and valuation expert best known for her work on the television show Salvage Hunters alongside her former husband. It describes her working for private clients and interior designers who contact her to locate unique decorative items and antiques. It describes her use of a wide network of dealers, restorers, and auction houses built over years of professional practice. That profile is not the description of a woman whose identity was entirely wrapped up in a television show or a marriage. It is the description of a practitioner, someone with something real to offer the market, regardless of what a camera crew, a production schedule, or a former husband is doing at any given moment. But the professional partnership and the personal one were inseparable for over a decade. And when the personal one collapsed in the most public and painful way imaginable, what followed required a particular kind of strength that most people in her position would not have found. The cameras kept rolling, and Rebecca Pritchard kept showing up. Salvage Hunters and the on-screen partnership.
Yeah, I'm going to take that. £20.
Yeah, good as gold.
Brilliant. Thank you. Great.
Most television programs invent chemistry between their presenters. Salvage Hunters didn't have to. What the cameras captured between Drew and Rebecca Pritchard was not constructed for an audience. It was the byproduct of two people who had been building something together for years before any production company showed interest in documenting it. The rhythms of how they communicated, the shorthand. The specific way Rebecca could look at something Drew had just paid money for and deliver a verdict that was simultaneously honest and kind and commercially precise.
Is it the same 25, is it?
No, it's not. It's 35.
I think, yeah.
20 quid?
That quality cannot be manufactured in an editing suite. Either it exists or it doesn't. With Drew and Rebecca, it existed. And the audience felt it from the very first season. Salvage Hunters premiered on Quest TV in November 2011. The format was deceptively simple on paper. Drew was traveling Britain in his van, hunting through estates and barns and auction houses and salvage yards for pieces with hidden value. Rebecca was based at the shop, providing historical context and valuation expertise for everything he brought back. Two distinct roles, two distinct skill sets, one coherent program built on the tension between Drew's instinctive buying and Rebecca's analytical assessment of whether his instincts were commercially sound. That tension was genuine. That was the point.
Look at this, look, brand new floor mats, brand new enamel.
Drew's approach to buying was emotional as much as it was commercial. He responded to objects, to their age and their history, and the particular quality of craftsmanship that made something worth preserving. He operated on feel, on decades of accumulated knowledge that had become instinct. He could be in a room of 1,000 objects and walk directly to the 3 worth having. Rebecca's approach was different. She brought the discipline of someone who had spent 20 years in commercial business before she ever picked up a piece of architectural salvage. She could assess what Drew had bought and tell him precisely what it was worth, to whom, and at what price point, with a confidence that came from research, network, and market knowledge rather than personal enthusiasm. Together, they formed something the antiques television world had been looking for without knowing it. Genuine complementary expertise rather than the more common format of one expert and one enthusiastic amateur learning alongside the viewer. Rebecca appeared in 46 episodes of the main Salvage Hunter series across its full run from 2011 to 2024. She was credited across those episodes variously as herself, as Drew's wife, and as Drew's former wife. That evolution in the credit listing tells its own quiet story about what the production was navigating in the years after the divorce. Nevertheless, the most significant development in Rebecca's television career came in 2018 with the launch of Salvage Hunters, the Restorers. Here is what that spin-off meant in practical terms. It was Rebecca's show, not Drew's, not a shared platform, a program where she was the lead presenter, the central authority, the person the audience watched, followed, and responded to entirely on her own terms. The Restorers ran for 6 seasons across 27 episodes between 2018 and 2024. The format placed Rebecca at the center of the restoration process, working with specialist craftspeople to restore the pieces Drew had sourced. She assigned projects. She assessed progress. She made the editorial decisions about what was good enough and what needed more work. It was a significant professional platform, and she filled it with exactly the quality of expertise and presence that the main show had always relied on her to provide. The micro question worth answering here is this: why did The Restorers work when it could easily have felt like a lesser spin-off designed to give a supporting character more screen time? It worked because Rebecca was never actually a supporting character. That had always been a misreading of her contribution. She was a co-professional in a professional partnership that happened to have one partner doing the more visually dramatic work. Giving her a show that placed the less dramatic but equally important work at its center simply made visible what had always been true. Viewers who had watched the main series for years responded to The Restorers with recognition that people were finally seeing something they had always known and acknowledged. This woman knows what she is doing. It is good to see the format built around that knowledge rather than alongside it. The show ran successfully for 6 years, 27 episodes, a respectable and loyal audience that followed Rebecca through the full arc of the restoration process with genuine engagement. And throughout all of it, the main Salvage Hunters series continued filming. Drew continued buying. Rebecca continued to provide the expertise and valuation authority that the show's credibility had always depended on. The professional partnership held even as the personal one had long since been dismantled. For 13 years, Rebecca Pritchard showed up through everything that happened between the first episode and the last. And what happened between them was considerable. The audience watching knew only what they could see on screen. Two professionals, working, producing something genuinely good. The cameras showed no cracks, no tension, no residue of a marriage that had ended publicly and painfully. But underneath that composed professional surface, a great deal had happened. And not all of it had been as quietly handled as Rebecca's public presence suggested. The full picture of what those 13 years actually contained is considerably more complicated and considerably more human. The divorce, the scandal, and staying anyway.
I can do 180 if that helps.
Yeah, it does.
Makes it happen.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll have them.
Most people, when a marriage ends that publicly and that painfully, walk away. But that was Rebecca Pritchard. She went back to work. That single fact says more about who she is than any interview she has ever given. And she has given very few, which is itself another data point in the same direction. Rebecca Pritchard has never used her public platform to process her private pain. She has never sold her version of events to a newspaper. Neither has never positioned herself as a victim or invited the public to take sides. She absorbed what happened. She kept her children out of it, and she showed up. The story itself became unavoidably public in 2017. Drew Pritchard had been involved in an affair with a woman named Amanda Thomas for approximately 2.5 years. Amanda was married to a man named Janus Bryn Thomas, the managing director of a crane company. Their son was best friends with Drew's son. The families were connected. The betrayal ran through multiple layers of trust simultaneously. When the affair ended, Amanda told her husband, Janus Thomas spent 2.5 years attempting to move past it. Then in October 2017, he saw Drew Pritchard in the beer garden of the Liverpool Arms pub in Conwy. Court records describe Drew as smirking at him. What followed was physical. Janus Thomas struck Drew hard enough to knock him to the ground. Drew lost his glasses and his drink. He was left with a cut on his elbow and pain in his jaw. The case went to the Llandudno Magistrates Court. Janus Thomas admitted to common assault and threatening behavior. He was fined £1,440 and placed on a local pub watch scheme. A restraining order Drew had applied for was not granted. The tabloids had a significant amount of material to work with. The affair, the confrontation, the court case. The detail that, during proceedings, Amanda Thomas's solicitor mentioned messages Drew had sent after the attack, described as goading. A separate criminal investigation into those messages was referenced in court. Amanda Thomas made a statement during the proceedings that added another layer. She said she had received messages from other women who contacted her, claiming they blamed her for the breakdown of their own relationships with Drew. That detail sat in the public record and has never been addressed or contradicted by anyone involved. Rebecca said nothing publicly about any of it. Not then. Not in the years that followed. That silence was not passivity. It was a considered decision by a woman who understood that engaging with the media coverage would only extend and amplify what needed to contract and settle. She had 2 children. Tom, born in 1999, Grace, whose age has always been kept carefully away from public discussion. Whatever she was managing privately was being managed in a way that prioritized those children over any impulse to defend herself in the press. The formal record of her business decisions tells its own story about the timeline. Her directorships of Drew Pritchard Limited, Drew Pritchard Classic Cars Limited, and Cloth Cap Productions Limited were all resigned in October 2016, before the public scandal broke, before the Liverpool Arms incident, before the tabloid coverage arrived. She had been managing the separation of her professional and personal life from the business structures they shared for over a year before any of this became public. That level of practical forethought is not the behavior of someone caught off guard. It is the behavior of someone who had been navigating a genuinely difficult situation with considerable strategic intelligence for a long time before the rest of the world found out about it. The divorce was finalized in 2017, and then she kept filming Salvage Hunters. The question audiences have never fully stopped asking is why? Why stay on a show with a man whose infidelity had become national news? Why continue building the Restorers alongside a professional structure that had been built within a marriage that no longer existed? Why give 7 more years to something that had its origins in a partnership that had publicly collapsed? The most honest answer is probably the simplest one, because the work was genuinely hers, the expertise was hers, the platform was hers, the audience relationship was hers. None of that was part of Drew's choices about his personal life. None of that was diminished by what he had done. Walking away from her own professional standing because of someone else's behavior would have cost her something real, something she had built with her own knowledge and her own effort across years of genuine work. That is not a calculation most people articulate publicly, but the decision to stay demonstrates it clearly enough. The Restorers gave her a specific place to put that decision into practice. Her own show, her own platform. Her own professional identity existed separately from the main series and from Drew's continuing prominence in the antiques television world. She used it well. For 6 years, she fronted that program with the same quiet authority she had always brought to the work. And then, in September 2024, that too came to an end. Rebecca Pritchard remained on the Salvage Hunters franchise for 7 years after her marriage ended, and then she quietly stepped away. The question nobody has fully answered is why that moment and not an earlier one. The quiet exit and what it really meant. She didn't announce it. She didn't give an interview. She didn't post a farewell on Instagram or record a video from an armchair explaining her reasons to the people who had watched her for 13 years. She simply stopped appearing, and the audience noticed immediately. September 2024 was Rebecca Pritchard's last appearance within the Salvage Hunters franchise. The Restorers had run their course. Her episodes of the main series had concluded. And without any formal statement from Rebecca herself, from the production company Curve Media, or from the network, she was simply no longer there. That absence landed differently on different parts of the audience. For some viewers, it confirmed suspicions they had carried for years, that the post-divorce arrangement had always been more fragile than it appeared on screen, that the composed professional surface Rebecca had maintained so carefully across 7 years of filming alongside her ex-husband had been costing her something that eventually became too much to sustain. For others, it felt abrupt in a way that was difficult to explain rationally. Rebecca had not been the show's central figure. The format was always built around Drew's buying and the finds he brought back. She had never been the face on the promotional materials or the name in the headline, billing. And yet her absence created a gap that went beyond her formal role. Something about the show felt different without her, less grounded, less credible in a specific way that was easier to feel than to articulate. The micro question this section is answering is straightforward. Why September 2024 and not earlier? The honest answer is that we do not know. Rebecca has not said. The production has not said. What we have is the timeline and what it suggests when read carefully. The Restorers concluded its run in 2024, 27 episodes across 6 seasons, a complete arc with a natural endpoint. The main series had been running for 20 seasons by the time Drew made his own exit announcement in April 2025. Rebecca's departure came approximately 8 months before Drew's. 2 exits, different timing, different circumstances, the same franchise is reaching the end of its original chapter. It is worth noting what Drew said when he announced his own departure in April 2025. He spoke warmly about the production team at Curve Media as a family over 15 to 16 years. He mentioned new cast members taking the show forward. He said almost nothing about Rebecca's earlier departure. There was no public acknowledgement of what her contribution had meant, no mention of the 13 years she had given to the franchise, no farewell tribute in his announcement to the person who had built the Restorers from the ground up alongside him. That silence is not an accusation. Drew's announcement was about his own exit and the reasons behind it. He was not obligated to make it about anyone else, but the audience noticed the absence of acknowledgement, and it added a particular texture to the already quiet circumstances of Rebecca's own departure. The online rumor landscape that filled the vacuum left by the absence of an official explanation is worth addressing directly and briefly. Various YouTube channels and social media accounts have circulated claims about behind-the-scenes conflict, alleged inappropriate relationships with colleagues, and dramatic falling outs as explanations for Rebecca's departure. None of these claims is supported by verified evidence. None have been sourced to credible reporting. They are the product of an information vacuum being filled by speculation and, in some cases, by deliberate sensationalism from channels whose engagement depends on amplifying drama that may not exist. Rebecca has maintained the same approach to these rumors that she has maintained toward everything that has been written or said about her private life since 2017. She has ignored them completely. She has not issued denials. She has not engaged with the platforms or circulated them. She has simply continued to be who she has always been, both publicly and professionally, without giving the speculation the oxygen it needs to become anything more substantial. That is either the behavior of someone with nothing to hide, or the behavior of someone who has learned through hard experience that engaging with misinformation makes it worse. Given Rebecca's track record since the divorce became public, both interpretations arrive at the same conclusion. She is not going to address it, and the absence of an address should not be read as confirmation of anything. What the company's house records do confirm is already documented. 3 directorships resigned in October 2016. No current directorships or appointments recorded as of 2026. The formal business structures that connected her to the Salvage Hunters enterprise have been fully unwound. The professional chapter that began when she joined Drew Pritchard Limited as a director in July 2006 is formally closed in every verifiable record. 7 years after the divorce, 13 years after the first episode, the chapter finally closed. On her terms, in her own time, without explanation and without apology. What that decision says about Rebecca Pritchard is consistent with everything else the record shows about her. She does not perform her life for public consumption. She does not explain herself to people who have not earned the right to an explanation. She simply moved on to something quieter, something more private, something that belongs entirely to her. And that is where the final section of this story begins. The woman who never needed the spotlight after the cameras, after the divorce, after 13 years of showing up when most people would have walked. Where does Rebecca Pritchard actually go? That question has been circulating through the Salvage Hunters fan community since September 2024. And unlike some departures from long-running television programs, the answer in Rebecca's case is not particularly dramatic. It is not a story of reinvention, crisis, or comeback. It is a story of continuity, of a woman who was always something specific and has simply returned to being that thing without the television schedule attached, what is actually verifiable in 2026. Rebecca Pritchard is 67 years old. She is based in London, CNCL. She maintains an active professional profile through United Agents, one of Britain's leading talent and specialist agencies. That profile describes her as a restoration and valuation expert, best known for her work on Salvage Hunters alongside her former husband. It describes her current work as sourcing decorative antiques for private clients and interior designers through her extensive network of dealers, restorers, and auction houses. That is a working professional's profile. Not a retirement announcement, not a reflection on a career that has ended. An active description of services currently available to clients who need them. The private client dimension of her work is significant and warrants proper understanding. This is not a small or casual operation. Working for private clients and interior designers in the decorative antiques market at the level Rebecca operates requires a network built across decades. Relationships with auction houses. Relationships with specialist restorers who can be trusted to handle rare and sensitive objects correctly. Relationships with dealers across the full range of the decorative antiques market, from architectural salvage through to fine furniture and decorative objects. Rebecca has been building that network since the early 2000s. Every year of Salvage Hunters, every season of The Restorers, every private project she worked on was alongside and around the television commitments. All of it was adding to a professional infrastructure that existed independently of the cameras and continues to function independently of them now that the cameras are gone. Her Instagram and X accounts remain active and maintained in 2026. Her social media presence is carefully curated in the way that has always characterized her approach to public life. She shares what she chooses to share. She keeps the rest private. There is no window into her personal circumstances beyond what she has consciously decided to make visible. Property development in North Wales continues to feature in her professional profile. She was involved in purchasing and selling residential properties in that region long before Salvage Hunters began. That work has continued alongside the television career and the antiques business throughout. It is another income stream and another professional dimension that exists independently of anything connected to the show or to Drew. Her net worth is estimated at approximately £2.5 million as of 2026. That figure reflects her television earnings across 13 years, her antiques business income, and her property development activities. It is a number representing the cumulative result of multiple professional streams operating simultaneously over a significant period. Not a windfall, not a single lucky break. The compound result of consistent professional activity across several decades. Her children, Tom and Grace, are adults. Tom was born in 1999. He would be 26 years old in 2026. Grace's age has been kept out of the public record by Rebecca's consistent and successful effort to protect her children's privacy across the entire period of their parents' public profile. Both children have been kept entirely out of the media spotlight. That is not accidental. It is the product of deliberate and sustained effort by a mother who understood from the beginning that the decisions she made about her public profile would directly affect people with no say in them. The rumor landscape around Rebecca's personal life in 2026 is not worth dignifying with detailed engagement. Various unverified claims circulate online about relationships, health, and circumstances. None is supported by credible sourcing. All should be treated as speculation until or unless Rebecca herself or a verified credible source confirms otherwise. What the record actually shows is simple and consistent. A private person who happened to spend 13 years in the public eye for professional reasons. She conducted herself during that period with consistent dignity, even when the circumstances gave her every reason to be less composed. She departed the television world without drama because drama was never her style and was certainly never her preference. Now here's the question that this entire story has been building toward. What really happened to Rebecca Pritchard? The honest answer is both simpler and more interesting than the clickbait version suggests. She built a career. She shared it with a partner who let her down in ways that became unavoidably public. She stayed professional when staying professional required genuine strength. She gave the franchise she had helped build 7 more years after the marriage that created it had ended. She left when the chapter had genuinely run its course, and she returned to the work that had always been hers, regardless of what else was happening around it. That is not a story about losing everything. It is not a story about scandal or collapse or the price of fame. It is a story about a woman who always knew exactly who she was, and who never particularly needed the world to agree with her about it. Some people don't require the spotlight to be certain of their own worth. Rebecca Pritchard has never been one of those people who did. Rebecca Pritchard never chased the spotlight. It found her. She used it professionally and purposefully for 13 years. And when it was time to step away, she did it the same way she had done everything else. Quietly, on her own terms, without explanation or apology. The divorce was public. The scandal was uncomfortable. The decision to keep showing up anyway was extraordinary. And the decision to eventually walk away was entirely her own. That is the full story, not the clickbait version, the real one. If this told you something about Rebecca you didn't already know, leave a comment below. Tell us what she brought to Salvage Hunters that nobody else could, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.